Hi everyone, my name is Davina San and I'm a student here at Palm Beach Atlantic University in West Palm Beach, Florida. With me is Dr. Lane Cohey, and we are so excited to share with you guys the new book that he wrote, which is The Disquieted Soul, and here's our Q&A. So although it's not a chapter in the book, do you think that a key application of the disquieted soul is with my generation in dealing with personal stress?
I do, just by talking with people like yourself and classmates. Lots of students have told me stress and anxiety has increased with your generation. And there are some studies that support that, and I'd be interested in your opinion why.
Well, first, just to define stress, it's a mental or emotional strain resulting from demanding circumstances. And to define being anxious, it's experiencing worry or unease or nervousness. And I definitely would say that the increase in technology, the increase in social media has definitely caused my generation to be more stressed and more anxious. The fact that we get instant highs from likes on social media or just video games in general gives my generation this unfortunate trait of impatience. And this impatience is being able to get on your phone and be on the internet in less than 3 seconds. So because of our impatience, we get stressed when we don't hear back from a job in a day or a week, and we get stressed when we just feel like an internship is not coming our way instantly. And then we get anxious about our futures. We are wondering what's going to happen next. Are we going to get married? Are we going to get a college degree? And that anxious and stress just goes really hand in hand.
Right. So you think that your need for instant approval and affirmation has impacted your generation, and it's differently than others?
Yeah, I definitely see it more competitively in my generation. We are just more competitive in our work life and our school life, and we just need that affirmation that we're doing a lot better than somebody else. And it's sad, but it's from our generation's higher need of affirmation. Again, this affirmation can be found in social media, whether it's a like on an Instagram or even just pretending to be someone else through social media to get more affirmation. So we call this the selfie-centered generation, but it's honestly acting like the least of ourselves when we're changing what we look like on social media just to receive that extra like or get that affirmation. And this can be found in just the numerous face filtering apps or body filtering apps that remove blemishes or rounds curves.
Right. So what burdens do you see coming out of this?
I think similar to the disquiet soul, we overcommit, we overworry, we overanalyze. We are burdened with just wanting to do it all, and therefore we overcommit ourselves and stretch ourselves so thin. So one of these days we just finally collapse with exhaustion and realize that we can't do it on our own.
Right. Well, I think every generation struggles with this in this phase of life because it's the first of a lot of things. And so whenever you go through the first of anything, it's a little bit more worrisome and scary because you haven't been there before. So some of that may not have to do uniquely with your generation, maybe your stage of life. But I think what you hit on, and I think really important, is what you call approval. I call it validation, that need to be validated, that need for recognition. That's huge. It's huge in human behavior, and in our kind of instant society like you described, I think that's adding to a whole lot more disquiet.
Definitely. So in our organizational behavior class, we focused on the topic of stress, and you asked us to do an assignment on your appendix on Christian meditation. Right. Why did you choose that?
So I think Christian meditation is a lost discipline that has been practiced for centuries, but now because of associations maybe with Far Eastern religions or New Age or whatever, it's almost lost in our generation. And that's unfortunate. It's a wrong view. And so if we study the original meaning of meditation, it's to chew on or to mentally replay over and over and over again actively. And so some have called it mental chewing. I think one of my favorite quotes is from Joyce Meyer, who says, if you know how to worry, you know how to meditate, because it's the same practice over and over and over again, except to a different end. Meditation is what we want to do, and worrying not so much. So the only difference really in this case is that meditation changes our focus.
And so you think the focus change is needed?
Yeah, I do, because I think it helps change our perspective. It's the reframing a little bit that we talked about in the book, and ironically, even though it's a discipline, it can actually be very restful. And so let me just quote a little bit directly from the book. The idea of meditation as rest might seem unusual, given that as I've defined it, meditation involves the active discipline of our thoughts. Rest, in its modern definition, translates to passivity, like sitting idly in a chair with a drink in our hands, zoned out in front of a screen. While this is certainly inactive, in my experience, it's not ultimately as restful as training ourselves to change our mental posture, broaden the expanses of our mind, and refocus our preoccupations. And so much mental churning and angst can be released by simply reflecting on the vastness of a starry night, the rhythm of ocean waves, or any majestic picture of God in His creation. How small and insignificant our problems become when we point them against the backdrop of creation and the Creator's splendor.
So is there some practice that you follow?
Well, so first of all, I don't want to advertise myself as an expert because I'm definitely a work in progress. But meditation, it's not a light switch that you just turn on and off. It's much easier sometimes than others, quite frankly. But to start, I think we have to coach ourselves consistently. It is a discipline, so we have to develop a recurring time to practice where we remove ourselves from elements of distractions and gadgets and set the gadgets away, and we need to focus and train ourselves to focus on God in His Word, in His work, in His ways. And whatever place or places we choose, it has to be something that should be free from, just ongoing distractions and preoccupations of the world.
So that's hard enough.
It is. But most importantly, we have to seek God and really invite God, if you will, to His presence and His power in our time of meditation. It's kind of like the psalm that says that you fill us with the joy of your presence, with eternal pleasures at your right hand. Through meditation, we can and we will experience the joy of God's presence when I think we focus on three specific things, which is cleansing, decluttering, and communing.
Let's take this one at a time. So cleansing.
Okay, so cleansing. So first, we really need to enter into meditation with clean souls.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is kind of what Psalm 51 says, where it says, create within me a clean heart, O God. And so Scripture, frequently paints this image of cleansing, of your soul's spiritual cleansing, if you will. And I think we need to adopt that. So rather than just rattling off a laundry list of sins that we've committed and so on and so forth and checking off the boxes, we need to really ask God to show us and to look and see if there's any wicked way in us and really go through the process of understanding that and then seeing the image of our souls, if you will, actually being bathed and cleansed.
And then decluttering.
Right, so we have to approach meditation with uncluttered souls, and this might be the hardest thing for us to do because we are, like you said, always just so frenetic, running around, anxious and distracted. And so we really have to ask God for a calming presence and to give us the peace that transcends understanding and really defragment, if you will, our souls. And sometimes that means also the process of binding up our hearts because we come into our time with God a lot of times pretty bruised and beaten up. And so we need God to be the strength of our heart and our portion forever. Finally, we should focus on an intimate communion with God. And that, to me, comes in two ways. First of all, reflecting on God, and then also training ourselves to listen to God. And the reflection part, we've talked about God's Word and His work and His ways. Well, that's pretty broad. What does that really mean? And the Puritans, for example, had no less than 50 different areas where they focused their meditations, and others have had other ideas. But what I just do is I sometimes will focus on a scriptural word, say, for example, joy, and I'll consider restored to me the joy of my salvation, for example, and I'll think a little bit about that. What does that mean? I'll think about Christ, for example, or Hebrews, where it tells, for the joy set before him, he endured the cross and scorned its shame and sat down at the right hand of God. And you think a little bit about, well, what is that joy of salvation? Actually buying the bride of Christ for his Father. And then you kind of picture things like the Psalms, where figuratively it talks about the trees clapping and the earth singing, as it were. And then you have a less metaphorical thing that's going on in Revelation, for instance, where you think about the angels and every tribe and tongue and nation seeing the Lamb opening the scroll. And that's all joy. It's joy because we're seeing the joy of salvation revealed. And so you just continue to unwind this and unwind it, and then you can get to a point, I think, that you can say, rejoice, as Paul says, rejoice always. And that's a process of replaying and consistently training yourself. And that's just one word, and that's just one thread. And then you seek, God and his direction and his word and his spirit for more words and more threads.
So does this work for you every time?
It does not for me. And not at all, because I think, we're complex people. And so, sometimes it's very, very hard, as we've already said, to calm or focus our thoughts or declutter our souls. And sometimes, candidly, we just need to get a good workout in before we can calm down. So there's a whole, physiology involved in all of this. But I do think that Christian meditation is kind of a lost key to a door that can really change the ruminations of somebody who's stressed out all the time. And I think our meditations, even though they can be choppy and haphazard, they don't have to be perfect. But they do need to be as disciplined, and we need to be persistent. Perfection is not required, but discipline and persistence is.
Well, that's good.